Hey everyone, welcome to The New Populist. I'm Dave Brown, co-author of the book Black and White, How the Left is Destroying the Dream of Martin Luther King and Our Founding Fathers. If you want a right-leaning perspective on race relations, go ahead and pick up a copy. There is a link in the description. My topic today is cultural Marxism. What is cultural Marxism? And the answer to that question is very important because when we misappropriate or call things cultural Marxism that is not cultural Marxism, we allow the left to sort of use that to make us look like idiots. We have this tendency right now to label everything that we don't like as being culturally Marxist. And that doesn't do things justice for our side because it is actually a little more complex than that. For example, Marx was a materialist. And because of that, there is an overlap in Marxist thinking and other left-wing philosophies or ways of thinking that also share elements of Marxism because they share the same philosophical basis. And because of that, because they share that same philosophical basis, it often seems like what they're saying is Marxist when it's really just an intersecting of ideas that happen to be parallel for a while. But because Marx was so obviously popular and his philosophy was used as the basis for the founding of the Soviet Union and then later China, we associate anything in that sphere as being Marxist, even when it's not. Now, the funny thing is, when you go back and look at Marx and his writings, he was more occupied with the mathematical portion of explaining capitalism and why at some point it would eventually become a defunct economic system and then evolve into socialism, communism. If you read his book, Capital, which is not a fun read because it is a large, mammoth, complex, tedious analyses of capitalism. It's full of mathematical formulas and computations. He speaks very little about cultural issues. And when we actually look at when he talks about cultural issues, it's usually in the backdrop of, well, these issues are a result of private property, of money, and they came about because our society evolved based on those things. And it was actually Frederick Engels who, is more specific about cultural issues. He wrote the Principles of Communism, and there are 3 sections where he talks about religion, nationalities, and the family. And I think it's important to look at what he says because it gives us a better context for how he was viewing these cultural issues. The first one is the 21st, section of the Principles of Communism. He says, what will be the influence of communist society on the family? And he goes on to say, it will transform the relations between the sexes into a purely private matter which concerns only the persons involved and into which society has no occasion to intervene. It can do this since it does away with private property and educates children on a communal basis, and in this way removes the 2 bases of traditional marriage: the dependence rooted in private property of the women on the man and of the children on the parents. So he's not saying that we're going to abolish, marriage per se or the family. He's saying that it becomes a private matter because the basis for it was originally based on private property, a material basis. So it would wither away as a sort of a side effect of a new communist society. He says in the 22nd part, what will be the attitude of communism to existing nationalities? The nationalities of the people associating themselves in accordance with the principle of community will be compelled to mingle with each other as a result of this association, and thereby to dissolve themselves, just as the various estate and class distinctions must disappear through the abolition of their basis, private property. So once again, he's talking about how these things will evolve when the root cause of everything, material, private property, goes away. And again, so it's not like it's sort of an aftershock thing after the big thing is taken care of, the private property issue. And in the communist society, there's no private property, and in effect, it'll get rid of the class and nationalities and the family model as it was when we had private property. 23rd part. What will be its attitude to existing religions? All religions so far have been the expression of historical stages of development of individual peoples or groups of peoples. But communism is the stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and brings about their disappearance. So if you understand the materialist view of history, religions are just a manifestation of the stages of development. And when we get to this new post-capitalist phase, the need for religion or people's draw to it will no longer be there anymore. Because, if you understand materialism, there's no place for religion because that's a superstition, a materialist, dialectical materialism. They don't acknowledge things that have a basis in, I guess, metaphysics, abstracts. In their viewpoint, the idea of God, a supernatural figure that exists somewhere outside this universe, is a non-starter for them. So for that reason, there will be no religion, but also, as he explains here, when society evolves, the need for religion will also go away. So when he talks about culture, religion, marriage, and family and all that, it's really more of in a passive way as an after effect of this communist, this Marxist revolution, and this new evolution of society. And if you look at current society, well, are there people who, are supporting the abolition of private property? Well, certainly not people who are running the system, the quote unquote globalists. Why would they support Marxism, which supports the abolition of private property, if they themselves are wealthy, rich, and control the system? We have a problem there. So what they're supporting is not cultural Marxism, it's something else that happens to share some of the same aspects of Marxism, but it's not Marxism. In one of my videos on COVID-19, The Great Reset, written by Klaus Schwab, the book, he talks about the trilemma. And in the trilemma, you can have two things, but not all three. And the three things are national sovereignty, democracy, or globalization. And if you have globalization and democracy, you can't have national sovereignty. So he describes this trilemma where we have a choice between those three things where we can only pick two. Now, as you can guess, they lean toward globalism. And if you're going to have globalism, well, they're going to give you the pretense of at least having democracy, which means that national sovereignty goes away. So what these globalists are actually supporting are things that undermine national sovereignty to make it easier for us to move toward a global system. Now, what underpins a country with a strong sense of identity and national sovereignty? What underpins that? Well, cultural, religious, and ethnic solidarity or togetherness. So what do they support? They support immigration. They support more, they talk about all the time, changing the demographics of this country away from being a white majority to being a mixed country. And they attack the major religion, Christianity, You look at Hollywood, you look at entertainment, Christianity is often the butt of jokes, but they dare not do that about Islam for two reasons. A, well, I think that they're actually scared of Islam, and B, because Islam is not the majority religion, they don't need to single that one out and attack it. So these globalists, the people who run our society, they're not Marxists, because to be true Marxists, they will be supporting the abolition of private property and capitalism and overthrowing the liberal system that we have today. They don't support that. They're not Marxist. They are neoliberal globalist. And they support things that, again, parallel some of Marxist thought because it has the same underlying philosophy, but it in itself is actually not Marxism. And we have to make that distinction, because when we call everything we don't like Marxist, the left goes, look at those conservatives, those right-wingers. They're scapegoating Marx again and blaming it all on him. And it's not true. We're not Marxists. I have a house. I have a job. I don't support overthrowing the government, or I don't support, abolishing private property. And so look at these crazy right-wingers, screaming Marx again. And in a sense, they were right. And that's how they win that propaganda war. Now, there are people on the left who are Marxist, who we look at Antifa, they're marching around with their communist flags. And why does the left-wing media and corporate America support them? Not because they're Marxists, but because they're useful tools in this fight against the right or traditional America. And so they're willing to use these knuckleheads who are going in the street, who are actually orthodox Marxists, who do want to see private property abolished. They support them because they serve a purpose in fighting this war for the soul of America. And thus they are willing to look the other way when they go through the streets and attack people and beat people up, and support radical philosophies like orthodox Marxism and communism. So we have that distinction. We have to make it so we better understand and we better can address the issues that lie in front of us, and we don't get in this trap of labeling everything we don't like as just being Marxist, because that's the easiest thing to do. Again, it's a little more in-depth, it's a little more subtle, and it's important to draw these distinctions so we can be, better warriors in this fight against the radical left. That's it for now. Again, if you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe. Share it with fellow patriots. It's much appreciated. I'll see you next time.